Good morning and welcome to Metro Board activities. We'll start with our safety contact. Before we begin our meeting today, we have Teresa. Good morning.
Thank you, sir. In the event of an alarm activation, we'll exit the conference room via the glass doors, proceeding into the lobby where we'll await further instructions from our security team. If we are instructed to exit the building, I'll lead the group to our designated assembly point as the security team coordinates with first responders. There's an AED located at the entry desk, and in the event of an emergency, I'll retrieve the AED and render aid while we await emergency services. Lastly, restrooms are located in the vestibule area adjacent to the conference room. During the winter season, our region experiences several severe weather events. When these events occur, metro platforms, escalators, rail cars, and bus surfaces can become wet and potentially lead to slips and falls. Being able to safely navigate all of WMATA's facilities is always paramount, and we work around the clock to ensure safe conditions. Here are some tips for safely navigating the system during the winter. Plan extra time in your trip as inclement weather can disrupt transit. Metro Rail generally operates normally in up to 6 inches of snow, but service changes may occur. Metro Bus may operate on detours. Metro Access will modify service as roadway and walkway conditions require. When navigating through stations, escalators, platforms, and buses, watch your step, do not rush, and pay attention to weather conditions and any wet floor signs and facilities. Use extra caution when walking on exposed surfaces, including parking lots, platforms, and bus stops. Never run for a bus or train. If you're traveling with children, hold them by the hand. Report any unsafe conditions or concerns to WMATA employees, including station managers or bus operators. Stay informed during weather events with Metro alerts and follow Metro on social media for any service changes. For additional information, visit the WMATA Router Guide. Lastly, on behalf of the Metro team, I'd like to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season. This concludes our safety contact.
Thank you very much, Ms. Impastato, and welcome to today's Finance and Capital meeting. I'm Matt Letourneau, Chair of the Finance and Capital Committee. Since this is the first meeting of the day, I'd like to ask the Board's Corporate Secretary to call the roll.
Chair Letourneau.
Present.
Vice Chair Klein.
Present.
Ms. Santos.
Present.
Mr. McAndrew.
Here.
Mr. Smedberg.
Present.
Ms. Martin Proctor.
Good morning.
Ms. Worth.
Present.
Mr. Drummer.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move to approve the agenda as presented. Are there any objections to the members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to the approval of minutes. We have the minutes of our November 21st meeting before us for approval. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. So we have one item on today's agenda, which is our formal presentation of the General Manager's proposed FY26 budget. The past several months, the General Manager and staff have laid out elements of this budget in these meetings. Today, the committee and the board will be asked to authorize going to public comment on the budget and its associated service changes. I do want to emphasize that that's just the first step in the process, the public comment process. The board typically goes out with a potentially more expansive type of proposal. And then we're going to have the opportunity through our work sessions to really drill down on elements of the budget and make any potential changes that board members wish to make. That will happen in January and February. And then on the current timeline, we would be coming back in March to review the public input and then approve the final FY26 budget. So I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Alamane and Mr. Webster to begin today's presentation. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Letourneau and members of the board. My name is Yetunde Olumide, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. I'm here this morning with Tom Webster, Executive Vice President, Planning and Chief Performance Officer, and Executive Vice President Sarah Meyer, Chief Experience and Engagement Officer. We'll be presenting the GM and CEO's proposed budget for FY26, as well as requesting authorization from the board to hold public hearings related to the proposed budget as required by the WMATA Compact. Our FY26 proposed budget aligns with our commitment to good financial stewardship, which comprehensively supports our strategic transformation plan, objectives of service excellence, talented teams, regional opportunity and partnership, and sustainability. This demonstrates Metro's unwavering commitment to financial stability and service reliability and continuity. Metro is fundamental to this region's success and returns substantial economic and environmental benefits to the region. The $5 billion proposed budget includes an operating budget of $2.6 billion and a capital budget of $2.4 billion. This budget highlights the continued focus on operational efficiencies, service enhancements, and future planning, including the Better Bus Network and Metro Rail automation to meet growing demand. This budget also maintains FY25 fare levels. Through these efforts, Metro aims to provide high-quality, sustainable public transportation to support the region's current and future needs. The key drivers of the FY26 budget include ridership, inflation, contractual agreements, and funding. The strength in ridership growth over recent months has allowed us to increase our ridership assumptions. Metro ended FY24 above budget with 242 million riders. While ridership growth remains tied to office telework policies, FY25 ridership to date continues to trend also above budget. Staff continues to monitor inflation and predicts a 3% rise in costs in FY26, though the impacts of historically high inflation from recent years have increased baseline expenses. The new collective bargaining agreement with our Local 689 union will minimize the impact of future inflationary spikes. The FY26 budget will continue its use of preventive maintenance transfers to alleviate the strain on the operating budget. Staff also continues to monitor the impact on the capital budget. Staff will present at a later date the FOP and 922 CBA updates, and as we also continue to work on the Local 2, which expires in June of 2025. As we have noted in previous presentations to the board, ridership growth remained strong through the second half of FY24. Total ridership for FY24 was about 21% higher than the prior year. This growth has continued into FY25, with ridership exceeding budget for the first quarter of FY25. Based on this strength, we have revised our ridership estimates for FY25 and beyond. We currently project to end FY25 with ridership of about 255 million, above our original FY25 budget ridership of 227 million riders. Now, Tom will discuss the fare and service optimization.
Thank you, Yetunde, and Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and the board. Again, I'm Tom Webster, Executive Vice President and Chief Planning and Performance Officer. So for FY26, Metro is proposing a package of service improvements for both bus and rail that make more efficient use of our existing assets and resources. These service changes will support the growing ridership and address our expected capacity needs within the projected funding available for FY26. With Metrobus, the GM's proposed budget will include the implementation of the Year 1 Better Bus Network, which is a resource-neutral transformation of bus service across the region. On Metro Rail, the proposed budget includes, again, a package of several service improvements focused on increasing peak period or rush hour period capacity and adjusting service patterns and weekend hours of operation to support and to drive ridership growth, and doing so without, again, requiring additional subsidy above projections. No fare changes are proposed in FY26, and we want to highlight here Next year, we will begin rolling out our new open payment program. For Metro Rail, we have a great opportunity this year with Metro's return to automated rail operations to improve service within the same level of projected resources. The proposed budget uses those efficiencies from automation to increase rail service by about 2 to 3%, both providing additional peak capacity at key bottlenecks in our system and also improving access to destinations by adjusting service patterns and expanding those hours of operation on weekends. The specific service optimization proposal includes adding red line and silver line super peak service, adjusting service patterns to improve the alignment and balance of the system and access to destinations by extending half of all yellow line trains to Greenbelt, and then splitting the eastern end of the Silver Line evenly between the downtown Largo branch and the new Carrollton branch. And then expanding weekends hours of operation, both opening 1 hour earlier on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. and staying open an hour later on weekend nights until 2 a.m. For Metrobus, as I mentioned, the FY26 budget is primarily focused on implementing the 2025 Better Bus Network redesign that the board approved last month. Much like the rail optimization proposal, our new bus network will improve service using the same level of projected resources. The FY25 network increases access to destinations for customers across our whole region and expands our frequent service network with 11 additional routes and adds service for about 20,000 people who currently lack service on the weekends. So together, both our rail optimization proposal and the Better Bus Network redesign demonstrate the potential to improve service with more efficient use of resources within the existing operating budget. So these service proposals will both support and drive ridership growth in FY26 and also position Metro to better serve the region in the future. Back to Yetunde.
Thank you, Tom. Metro's FY26 proposed operating budget of almost $2.6 billion includes operating expenses of $2.5 billion, as well as $72 million in debt service and $14 million in reimbursable projects. This budget is funded by $545 million of passenger and non-passenger revenues and $1.9 billion of jurisdictional subsidies. In addition, Metro will apply about $28 million in prior year savings to the FY26 budget. Metro's FY26 proposed capital budget of about $2.4 billion includes capital programs and projects of $2.1 billion, as well as about $253 million in debt service and an estimated $10 million in revenue losses due to service closures for construction. This budget is funded through federal and state sources, as well as $772 million in debt. Ensuring current service levels and promoting long-term planning requires reliable funding, and Metro's financial challenges continue for both operating and capital budgets. Major state and federal sources are not indexed to inflation, eroding the buying power over time. Furthermore, with the conclusion of federal relief funding, Metro returns to its traditional funding sources for its operating budget, operating revenue and subsidies from our jurisdictional partners. Metro's operating revenue continues to be impacted by fare evasion on Metrobus, a known problem that will require a regional solution. The lack of dedicated funding source, uncertainty regarding the operating subsidy, and the absence of an operating reserve also continue to constrain the long-term outlook for the operating budget and have required an over-reliance on using capital funding to balance the operating budget. Metro is poised to continue its strong momentum as ridership grows. However, we cannot overlook the persistent impact of these financial challenges. I'll go a little bit more into the operating budget. The FY26 proposed operating budget is funded through about $444 million in passenger revenues and $101 in non-passenger revenues, and about $1.9 billion in jurisdictional subsidy payments. In addition, Metro has $28 million in prior year savings to apply to FY26. Strong ridership growth has driven passenger revenue, which is budgeted at about 14.7% over the relative to the FY25 approved budget. The operating budget funds service provided by Metro Rail, Metro Bus, and Metro Access. This budget focuses on optimizing service within available resources through rail optimization, targeted service enhancements, and the implementation of year one of the Better Bus network redesign. Metro continues aggressive cost management while strategically improving regional service. Gross expenses in the FY26 budget, expenses before preventive maintenance, are expected to increase by 3% over FY25. Service improvements such as rail optimization and implementation of the Better Bus network redesign are all budget neutral, meaning that an expense increase is offset by additional revenues. The FY26 budget also includes $24 million in expenses associated with the DC 24-hour and additional bus service that are funded solely through the District of Columbia. Metro will continue to use preventive maintenance transfers above the historical $60 million with an additional $69 million of transfers in FY26 proposed budget. However, this reduction from the 25 budget and the 25 and 26 budget plan presented last February. This reduced reliance on capital funding relative to FY25 is critical to mitigating the impacts on the future of the capital funding. Metro's net operating expense for FY26 proposed budget is about $2.5 billion. This slide summarizes the FY26 operating budget as well as the 27 forecast for planning purposes. The revenue in the FY26 proposed budget is about 11.8% higher than the FY25 budget due to the strength in ridership growth. In addition to revenue, the FY26 budget applies the $28 million previously described from previous year. The jurisdictional subsidy of $1.9 billion and the additional $95 million is also consistent with the February FY25 to 26 budget plan. As shown in the previous slide, base expense will only grow by 3%. When we layer the additional expenses, the gross expenses increases to about $2.57 billion. Preventive maintenance in FY25 of about $121 million is reduced to $69 million in FY26 proposed budget. The FY27 forecast is for planning purposes and is based on projected ridership, economic assumptions, and funding. This forecast is developed assuming growth rates as shown on this slide. Metro's FY26 to 31 capital improvement plan of about $12.5 billion will fund almost $10.5 billion in CIP investments across the 6 CIP categories. It will also fund over $2 billion in debt service payments. As discussed in previous presentations to the board, the funding available for Metro's capital plan in future years is declining. Without additional funding sources, the second half of our 6-year CIP will see a dramatic decrease in annual funding available as we exhaust our ability to use debt to fund capital projects. The average annual spending for the final 3 years of the CIP will decrease by about $745 million each year relative to the average annual spending for the first 3 years of the CIP. This results in approximately $2 billion in state of good repair needs not funded in the 6-year program, and this also increases the risk of slowing progress and reducing our states of good repair backlog and hampers future modernization and expansion efforts. One factor that is constraining Metro's non-debt capital funding sources is that half of these do not grow with inflation. Metro's $500 million in dedicated funding and $292 million in PREA funding are not indexed to inflation. As such, the buying power has significantly decreased over time. Tom.
Thank you. As we've discussed with the board in previous sessions, and in light of the funding deficit and funding constraints, our team at Metro has been looking for every opportunity to drive down the costs of delivering the capital program, identify efficiencies, administrative cost savings. To date, we've identified $275 million of cost reductions, projected cost reductions, about $175 million over the roughly 7-year period of capital program administrative savings, and over $100 million through detailed reviews of projects looking for opportunities for structural recurring savings by simplifying standards and practices and working to reduce customization where possible. This practice of cost reduction allows us to preserve more funding capacity for future state of good repair program investments. This region and the federal government's investment in Metro's capital program has allowed Metro to make substantial progress in the replacement and rehabilitation of the system's assets. And we've seen significant performance improvement results, as well as a reduction in the amount of overdue capital replacement and rehabilitation work over the past several years. As we discussed with the board in a session a couple of months ago, the looming funding deficit and constraints on the capital program really are forcing us to shift from a strategy that is primarily proactive, maintaining, rehabilitating, and replacing assets before they have failures or reliability issues, to a primarily reactive approach where we use the limited resources we have to address issues as they're arising. This is obviously not the preferred approach to capital investment, as predictable, sustainable funding allows us to plan and work proactively. But this capital program this year reflects, particularly towards the latter part of the 6-year program, a shift in strategy to a more reactive approach. This next chart is a visual of our projected state of good repair and modernization needs over the next 26 years or so to 2050. And I'll just remind the board and the public, we have a 6-year financially constrained capital program and projected needs that exceed those financial constraints in the 6 years. We also have a 10-year plan that is not financially constrained, and then a long-range model that identifies capital needs, capital reinvestment needs, and modernization opportunities. So you see on this chart, the red line is our projected funding availability over that time period, again, with a lot of assumptions about the continuation of existing federal and regional funding, and that is far below our projected needs for state of good repair and modernization. Our proposed FY26 to 2031 six-year capital program largely continues work that is underway or committed today. Most of that funding goes towards rehabilitation, maintenance, and replacement of the system's existing assets. And you see examples of those listed above, but this is the standard work reinvesting in assets that Metro has and owns and operates today. And then there are several major investments under development and in either planning or engineering or design. Those include a new railcar fleet management facility, planning and project development for advanced signaling, a Metro training center, digital modernization efforts, as well as future work at stations, both to improve, both to rehabilitate structures and platforms, but also to look at opportunities for circulation and entrance improvements. With that, I will turn it to Sarah.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Meyer, Chief Customer Officer here at WMATA, and I'm happy to present our communications and outreach plan if we are approved to move forward. Our team will be ready to publicize and receive public input beginning in January for the key budget proposals outlined in the presentation today. We will create both printed and online materials, and feedback will be collected through two methods: our online survey, which will be available in English and Spanish, and 3 in-person hearings, 1 virtual hearing at the end of January. 3 public outreach reference points will be key in distributing the information today. The wamata.com/budget website will be translated in Spanish and will also include information on the FY 2026 budget proposals, and how to give input will go live on January 11th if the public hearing is authorized today. Our outreach flyer will be translated into 13 represented languages, including Arabic, Chinese, Farsi, French, Filipino, Korean, Portuguese, Russian, Somali, Spanish, and Vietnamese. The brochure will include the FY 2026 budget proposals and distributed throughout the system in our rail stations, buses, and Metro access vehicles. Our stakeholder toolkit will also be shared with community partners and WMATA stakeholders at the kickoff of our open comment period for the FY 2026 budget. Our tactics generally are geared towards reaching low-income, non-English, and people with disabilities. Bus and rail signage is one of our traditional methods of reaching customers throughout the system. And over the years, we've explored ways to expand our digital media outreach, and we will be continuing to use social media and local non-English publications to share ways to provide feedback on key budget proposals. Last year, there was a 21% increase in our social engagement on the budget in the FY 2025 budget hearing cycle, with more than 4,400 interactions. And now, in addition, our team will also host virtual webinars for stakeholders throughout the region, thanks to the development of the Community Outreach and Relations Office led by Erica Cunningham. Partnering with the Board Secretary Office, we will also be promoting our in-person hearings at each of our HQ offices in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, as well as providing in-person language support if needed. Our virtual option for customers will also be held in late January. At our last budget hearing, we had 85 individuals participate through the virtual hearing. The most important tactic is the survey. Last year, there were over 8,000 survey completions and 55 comments uploaded, which represented 95% of the input that was received. So that is something we'll continue to use moving forward. We're certainly looking forward to hearing from our customers on these items. And I will give it back to Yetunde.
Thank you, Sarah. So with the conclusion of our presentation, we're seeking the board's authorization to conduct the public hearings and related public participation activities for the proposed FY26 operating budget and FY26 through 31 capital improvement program. With the board's approval, we will conduct public hearings related to the 26 proposed budget and 26 through 31 CIP in January. Staff plans to return to the board in March for the final budget adoption. We want to thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. We'll open it up to questions. Are we operating in committee of the whole because this is budget anyway? Okay, so any member of the board, feel free to jump in. Somebody over there wants to go.
Thanks so much for the presentation. I just have two questions. So on slide 14, we list out all of the, I had a question about the operating, oh, wait till you get there. One up. Yep, there we go. So for the operating, can you provide an example of what some of the reimbursable projects may be?
Thank you for your question, Board Member Worth. Some of the operating reimbursable projects include our joint and adjacent projects, as well as the TSP grants for special police work. I'm happy to provide a table with the exhaustive list of each of those projects. Totals up to about $14 million. And we have either specific grants or jurisdictional funding specifically for those projects.
Great, thank you. And then my other question is about the operating subsidy. There's like a slide that shows the amount that the district for our subsidy for $375 million. Is that inclusive of Kids Ride Free revenue, or would Kids Ride Free be on top of that?
Thank you again. That's inclusive of Kids Ride Free.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it.
Most welcome.
Yes, Ms. Martin Proctor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for this presentation. I just have just one clarifying question with regards to our community outreach standards. I know that you spoke specifically with regards to working with our stakeholders. Can we elaborate a little bit on that? Are they a good mix of stakeholders? Are they grassroots organizations? What does that directive look like? And are we hitting all 8 wards?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we believe it is a broad list. It includes individuals like those that represent the ANCs. It also includes community organizations. Erica's office is new, but she has brought in a number of individuals with connections into state and local governments that also are providing us new connections to school boards and other ways to reach new audiences. But would be happy to take a look at, happy to provide those lists to you to see if there's any other groups. We also have a way to subscribe to receive communications and information, so I'll be happy to send that out as well if you have any ideas on that front.
That would be great. I truly appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we're connecting with communities specifically with regards to individuals with disabilities. I know we have a lot of those organizations here in DC. I just want to make sure we're hitting the grassroots and also connecting with our university partners.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Chair Santos.
And I have a number, but I'll just ask probably one of the easier ones first, which is just around ridership. Could you please speak to ridership is obviously one of the main drivers of revenue. Could you speak to what are the fundamental assumptions about ridership, and can you affirm that the team has done scenario planning, and what are how the budget reflects that? I know some of the answer, but I think it's important to talk about.
Thank you for your question, Chair Santos. I'll start maybe FY24. We came in at about 242 million trips above budget. Prior to that, we had communicated an FY25 budget, of course, number of the 227 million trips. With the ridership behavior we've seen at the tail end of FY24 and also the first quarter of FY25, we bumped up that rider assumption to upwards of 12% from the budget numbers you see on the screen at 227 to 255 million trips. We're confident that as we progress through FY25, we'll continue to see that upward projection reaching that 255 million trips. Now, building on to FY26, originally we had communicated, of course, and there's a timing thing going on here, because when we're presenting this budget, time lapses and we move forward, we have improved the proposed budget ridership number to 268 million, which is another 5% increase over the FY25 reforecast. So as we get smarter on our ridership experience as the months go by, we're able to make adjustments where applicable to our ridership and therefore our revenue assumptions for FY26 and 27.
I'll add to this, Chair. Thank you for the question. This graphic shows point projections for a pretty long period of time. And of course, these are projections, and there's a lot of uncertainty on what's going to happen in our region and with our ridership. I think the way our team approaches this, using analytical tools, models, and trend analysis on what we're seeing today, this week, this month. There are a wide range of outcomes, and there are variables in the amount that customers pay depending on where they are in the region, depending on what days and times they're traveling. So there are a number of different scenarios that are that we can test that look at if employers encourage more people to come back to the office on a more regular basis. What does a 1% or 5% or 10% increase in that type of thing do to this baseline projection that we've shared here? So for communicating the amounts in the budget and the projections, these are specific amounts, but obviously there's a wider range of things that could happen.
Thanks. And just expressing appreciation, the general manager and your team will come back to the board in a month-ish or so to just do a little bit of a deeper dive on implications if there's overperformance, which is great, on ridership, and if there's any financial implications thereof. I have other questions, but I'll hold. No.
If you have other questions, I would go ahead now.
Okay. Can you please speak to, there's a number of, well, big picture. Among the concerns, obviously, in parallel is about, for all of us, is given the tight financial environment, fiscal environment, that Metro is living within its means. I know there was a slide earlier that acknowledged certain assumptions about cost savings to be achieved. Could, I guess, Cindy, if you could please speak to the approach for cost management and how did you get to the, or what are the assumptions about the, I think it showed a 1% number of assumed cost savings and whatever you want to comment on that regard.
Thank you for that question, Chair Santos. So what we have done FY 24 and 25, and then as we proceed through onto 26, is identify administrative cost savings initiatives that the costs are repetitive through the years. And so we're able to not only hone in on the one-time cost savings, like what I talked about concerning the $28 million savings that we're applying, and that's from FY 24, that we will have available to apply to FY 26. Some of those administrative savings, as we have worked through, one of the biggest things here would be our vacancies. We still run at about a 10% vacancy rate at this time. We continue to work through our hiring and push forward on those initiatives as well. Some of the other initiatives we're looking at include digital transformation, the work we have been doing on our hardware purchasing, specifically with the laptops and computers and other types of technology, which Judd can talk about in more detail. We've also done some work around consulting services, streamlining what it is that we actually need there to the extent that we have any duplicative services. We have looked at those and also eliminated those. Some of the work we're doing in our procurement transformation, for example, is looking at purchase orders and blanket purchase orders we have throughout the authority, to the extent that we're able to consolidate some of those types of services throughout the authority, then we're doing that as well. Those are just some examples of the initiatives we're looking at.
Thank you. Again, I can go on, but I definitely, please, my colleagues need to jump in.
Yeah, one topic to add here, I think just exploring the relationship between the state of good repair of the system and how much progress we've made in the condition of some of the critical assets. There's a relationship to the ongoing maintenance of that system, which are largely operating costs. So as investments are made through the capital program in rehabilitation and replacement, it can drive maintenance of cost efficiencies and opportunities to rethink how we're approaching vehicle maintenance and the amount of work that has to happen in a more reactive, corrective model as we're addressing issues that come up. So there's a balance here, and that, I'm sorry, that's not a line item list of cost reductions, but as we maintain the system in a better condition, there are opportunities to modernize our practices as well. So there's some of that efficiency happening here.
Thank you. And that reminds me of another topic that has caught my attention. I'm trying to inform or educate myself. So I'm looking forward to a field trip that the board will be doing early next year. But if you could speak to, there's a number of items in the capital budget currently that are slated for near-term implementation that will achieve what you're talking about. One of them that there's been some discussion about is the consolidation of heavy rail Heavy Rail Operations Maintenance Facility.
goal-
Yeah,
your goal.
there you go.
Yeah.
The acronyms,
that's-
sorry.
I'm trying to de-acronym.
So can you just please explain the project? Because I think there's a number of these items that the board is, or at least speaking for myself, there's some information about, but I at least have not yet fully gotten comfortable as to, it doesn't mean that there's a problem, but still in the process of educating ourselves about the return on investment to WMATA, the direct impact. If you could please explain that particular one.
Yes, I'd be happy to, and I'll do it briefly now, but then also we are scheduled to come back the end of January with a more detailed dive, particularly into some of these major projects and investments. So the heavy repair and overhaul function here at Metro is really critical for our future and for the reliability and safety of the fleet. We have acquired 748 7000 series rail cars and have a scheduled rehabilitation program where work is performed to keep the rail cars in a state of good repair in increments over time. So at 6 years, 12 years, just for example. That work needs a dedicated facility to be performed efficiently, effectively, and to not either get in the way of our existing operations and daily maintenance, and to avoid scenarios where we would have to ship the rail cars to other areas around the country for those rehabilitation activities. So what this capital program includes is a proposal to build out a new facility at the existing Dulles rail yard within the existing envelope of the physical structure there and within the existing rail yard for a dedicated space to perform those scheduled maintenance and rehabilitation activities. We're in, as I sort of described earlier, the project development and design stage of that. So it's not a fully committed construction project. So absolutely happy to come back in January and go into a little bit more detail on that. The return on investment there is really our rail cars being in a state of good repair, safe and reliable, and then the avoidance of the costs and both the financial costs and the indirect costs of having to perform that work in a fragmented way that, like I said, might include shipping things off-site, which would have significant costs.
Thanks, Mr. Webster. And just to confirm, it sounds like currently the work is being performed in WMATA owned or leased facilities, just at multiple sites. Is that right?
So traditionally, when midlife overhaul or rehabilitation work has been performed here at Metro, it's at our Greenbelt rail yard facility and at Brentwood. The driver of the need for this is the increase in the size of our railcar fleet over the last decade, as well as a shift in the methodology used for rehabilitation of railcars from one that focused on a midlife, very substantial reinvestment to one that focuses on component rehabilitation, as I described earlier, over a scheduled period of time. So the idea here is to move to that dedicated facility and address rail cars on a rolling basis.
Thank you. And I look forward to, sorry for the pedantic questions, but I think it's important that the board understand this. Again, I'm going to ask colleagues if they have any, because I can keep going, but anybody?
I think we do have two more with questions, so but we can come back to you too. But we'll let Ms. Klein and Mr. McAndrew jump in, and I may ask one or two as well, but go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Letourneau. I just had two. First off, this isn't actually so much a question. Well, it is a question, but I wanted to highlight that the open payments transition is included as part of the FY26 budget, right, proposal. And I think I just want to highlight that for the folks in the public who might be listening, because that's actually going to be a really important transformation in the way that people can access the system. I am curious if you could say a little more about what type of coordination is going on with that regionally, to make sure that, folks have a clear idea of what to expect in terms of timing for that.
Thank you for the question. I can speak to this briefly, and of course, we can follow up with more detail. We have regional coordinating committees around both our Smart Trip program and Fair Payment program. So there's existing venues for information sharing. The way we have structured the open payment implementation contract allows for our local bus operator partners to also, if they have the modern upgraded fare boxes, move to this open payment strategy through this mechanism. So we're beginning those conversations now. We're still in the saying this a lot, in the development stages of how we're going to implement this. So some initial conversations, and those will need to get more detailed with our partners across the region. And just on the part of the question about timeline, we're looking for, we will likely have a phased rollout of open payment beginning in May and through the end of next calendar year. So that will also require significant coordination and communication with our partners and with customers, but more to come.
Thank you. And that this is, I'm sure folks have thoughts about the implementation of this and what it could mean. And I hope that the board will be able to take up this conversation probably next cycle about how we can maximize the benefits of the open payment possibility once it's implemented. My other question is a little bit broader, and I'm just struggling with the timeline again here of some of the questions that Chair Santos was asking about the capital budget, capital program. The capital program is very large, 2.4, I think, was the just FY26 number, and then obviously the 6-year program is bigger. And there's a lot in there. And the board is scheduled to have a deep dive, as you've alluded to, about that in late January. And I'm trying to, you may have said it and I forgot, but when are we looking at having the public comment period open and those hearings? Because I think it's really important that the information that the board is going to get in the deep dive, which is a working session of the board, I would expect that's going to be also helpful to people who are interested in commenting on the budget. So could you say a little more about the timeline there?
Sure. The proposed timeline is to have our in-person hearings around the last week of January. So January 26th, 27th, 28th are the dates that we're looking at for the hearings. The survey will be developed and launched on January 11th as part of the strategy. But we also have ways to solicit more input through our customer satisfaction survey, when and if that's needed as well.
I can also add, we have capital program publications and an overall budget publication that will be available with all of the excruciating detail on the capital program. So that will be available for the public.
Right. I appreciate that information will be available, as it will be available to the board as well. But that's a lot of information. And so I am wondering whether it is the most effective use of the public hearing time to have that happen before we've had the board work session on the capital budget. This is just a thought. Or whether there may be information that is highlighted or elicited during that work session. This is not a question, this is a comment, something that I'm thinking about as we're talking about this. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up to that. When does the survey close?
It would close at the end of the public comment period, which, hold on. I will get back to you shortly if you want
What
to.
the end of the public comment period is? Okay, because that might be one way to address this, which is to keep it open. so the public can comment. I mean, we don't typically get a lot of capital comments, honestly.
Well,
but-
in part, that may be because it's hard to
Yeah.
understand exactly what.
And I think you, Mr. Webster and Mr. Clark and I have talked a little bit about is kind of a greatest hits synthesized version of the capital document that could help highlight major components and milestones that are going to hit in the upcoming year. You know, not necessarily just new things, but things that are significant. And so perhaps if that could be available earlier, as early as feasible, that might help as well. Okay. Did you have an answer on that? Okay.
Yes, February 3rd.
February 3rd. Okay.
Date
Okay.
is the proposed closing of the public comment period, February 3rd.
And could that stay open longer if the board were to ask you to do that? I know there's, okay, Ms. Allison, 'cause I know she's kind of the keeper of the calendar on this, so, okay. Mr. McAndrew.
I'll pull up the slide here, not that one. So we're coming to the end of kind of the 2018 funding. I just kind of wanted to get a sense, understanding how much of the capital program would be, straight up SGR, and then how much of the capital program would be straight up, maybe not straight up, it's a little murky. We've talked about it, but the expansion enhancement. Because I think we're getting to that point where answering that question, there are real trade-offs that we have ahead of us. And I think that's critical for us as we look at this budget.
Thank you for the question. Importantly, there is no extension funded program in Metro's capital program. No expansion. There are a couple of program elements aligned with the board's strategic transformation plan that are not strictly replacement, rehabilitation, state of good repair. The primary one is our zero emission bus program and transition. The capital program includes, this proposed capital program includes completing the projects committed and underway today. So the replacement of Northern Bus Garage and Bladensburg Bus Garage and the electrification of those two facilities, as well as the electrification of Cinderbed Road, which is funded in part by a federal competitive grant, as well as the electric buses needed to operate out of those facilities. Beyond that, there is no additional funding for the zero emission program. That is the single largest non-state of good repair program.
Gotcha. What would, and I think we saw this once, what is the SGR balance that we are unable to fund through this budget that you would ideally be funding through this budget?
Thank you for the question. There's sort of two ways to look at this. One is during the 6-year period, we should, in an ideal hypothetical, invest about $6 billion more than we have in the capital program. There are time, space, physical constraints and other things that would prevent us from making that level of investment on top of what we have underway, in part because of the implementation timeline for projects and programs that would address those needs. So we estimate that about $2 billion more of state of good repair investments through programs and projects could happen in that 6-year period above and beyond what we have in the proposed program.
Got it. So in terms of like the enhancement and modernization discussion, so bus is one, we're grappling with the same challenges, I think, in Baltimore, but nationally, so that's kind of a challenge, right? In terms of how far you go and where you pause, but others that are in the budget, one we've talked about is open fare payments. Seems to be a modernization, a good one. It'd be good to get a sense, well, first, do we classify that as modernization? what's the cost of that, actually? I don't think we've seen that as a board yet. And then, what's the projected ROI that we're going to see as that comes online? I'd love going to New York and tap my card. It's great. And I expect it will be good here too. But I think, that level of granularity would be good to get.
So we'd be happy to do a deeper dive into the open payment program and the financial implications. The capital sort of build part of that program is actually a relatively comparatively low cost. It's a software, essentially a software program, but there are broader implications for ongoing operating costs, ongoing revenue, and ease of use of the system, which should drive ridership and revenue growth. But we are planning to return to the board with a more detailed look at the implications of that program.
Got it. And same goes for the automation and platform screen door investment. That would be a modernization investment.
So fundamentally, our signaling system need is a state of good repair investment. We have a 1970s designed legacy signaling system that will need to be replaced, and that is classified in our capital needs as a state of good repair investment. The opportunity that it presents when we look at what the modern signaling system will look at, it would inherently include modernization, as we're replacing a 50-year-old design system with a modern system that will have different characteristics and features.
Gotcha. I saw an article, and this may be the worst way to start a question, but I saw an article once recently that New York City is currently upgrading their signal system to the next frontier, but they aren't moving into platform screen doors. Is that correct?
That is correct, I believe.
Gotcha. I've got a couple more if you'll let me go.
Might as well get it out.
Okay. So this is more of a statement, and it's good investment. Ridership is high. We got to keep making investments in service. But I think it would be good to get a very granular level of understanding of our service optionality of what we're making and the ROI that we're expecting out of it. And I say that just because, last year we as a region came together, and I think we in the state of Maryland put in $140 some odd million of a good investment. But it grew our operating budget for WMATA by 25% at the same time that our growth rate of our revenues were in the 2-ish%. And I think, just back of envelope math, the budget as proposed has us at about 8% this next year. And again, our revenues are about 2%. And so I think, getting a level of understanding of kind of the ROI, where we have optionality in the service planning is going to be, I think, important for us as we look at this.
I'll jump in there, I guess, board members. So, because I appreciate I think the framing or context of the question. So, quite frankly, I'm really proud of what the proposals the team put together, because that is ROI based, just like the one last year. So, like this is a good example. We've done this month after month of doing capacity analysis and demand analysis. Last year, like a good example is the Silver Line was built to not have trains go past Stadium Armory. That's how the grant was written. That's how the project was supposed to be delivered. And for a long time, we've been running Silver Line trains to Largo. That was never actually envisioned as part of the program. So you'll see in this budget, we believe splitting those are crucially important, because New Carrollton has more or less equivalency of ridership as Largo, and Largo is getting more trains than are needed, and New Carrollton could use some more service. Secondarily, the Red Line. I think most people, if you're looking at a pure ROI financially, we should not be running the level of service to Shady Grove and Glenmont versus the inner part of the system. But that is locally known as turnbacks, and certainly not liked by a lot of people. That is the most cost-efficient thing we should do. But we are trying to figure out how to run the system in a way as a tri-state organization to get the most value out of every asset, knowing that not everyone actually wants to see the program as a regional asset. So, we're trying to get more yellow line trains up to Greenbelt as an example. So every train that we have, we are trying to get the most utility out of that train and carry and induce the most amount of passengers, because the fixed costs are so high, every additional trip is so low. So to your point about understanding more ROI, that's what we are doing. That's what we've done since I've been here. We can get in more detail. We would have to understand exactly the questions, I guess. So I'm not trying to defer on the answer as much as I believe this is what we are trying to do. We're trying to be very transparent, show where the value of every dollar is to be spent on the service itself. So if there's ways that we could do that differently, show information differently, or have different cuts of questions or information, we're happy to do that. I just don't want to have Tom and Tunde specifically try to answer that I think that they have done. So maybe if there's something that we're missing, we're just happy to understand it in a different way.
Yeah, maybe it's just a deeper dive on the decisions that we're making here in terms of ridership, costs, et cetera. Some of these are no cost, supposedly. And maybe there's a lot under the hood of the Silver Line split there, which is great. But I think, just getting a better sense of granularity there would be good.
And, we do have the work sessions planned to do that. But I think what we can talk about is maybe a board process to make sure those questions are getting in ahead of time, so that can be productive and make the most of everybody's time.
Yep.
Okay, I know Mr. Spedberg had a question.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, could you just explain the door pilot and platform and how it's so that is modernization? Is that, I mean, I know you were being careful with your words, but
Thank you again for the question, Mr. Smedberg. I think when we're classifying capital needs, so investment needs, for one of the frameworks we use is this project primarily replacing an existing asset or rehabilitating an existing asset, or is it primarily new within our capital needs? The replacement of our existing signaling system has both characteristics, and we are in the program and project development phase of that. So there are elements that are very clearly replacing an existing asset, and then there are opportunities to really maximize that investment that have more modernization characteristics. But I think it is not easy for us to say that a project is strictly state of good repair or modernization when it is something at this scale and still in development.
Yeah, I'll add into that because I think that's a good question, but I think we've caught ourselves, and I don't know if it's the narrative around what happened in 2018 funding that maybe unintentionally did this, but there's really no such thing as state of good repair or modernization in many of the things we're doing, in the sense of we're taking a fridge from 1970 and we're buying a fridge from 2025. What is that? And obviously we are buying a modern fridge, but it is a state of good repair. So somehow the language, I think, as our organization in the region has got very focused on one. I'm not saying that was bad by any means, because what it really means is we want all of our assets to work in a functional, safe, reliable way. And obviously the newer those assets are, they're going to perform at the highest level and need the least amount of money to maintain them while they're in good condition. So I think Tom was trying to be responsive. I think this board member Andrew's question is, the only real significant thing in the program is zero emission buses, because we could continue to buy diesel buses over and over and over. The other ones are relatively small in the sense of digital modernization on, say, digital wayfinding. We could choose not to do more digital wayfinding. That is, that I would classify as truly being a modern system, but we're not replacing an asset per se. That's a good example. There might be a few like that. We can do a deeper dive, and we've committed to the board on January 30th on the entire capital program, and we can go through the rail automation program, and advanced signaling is part of that. So we are going to have to replace our signaling system at some time. And the question is, are we going to replace our for lack of better, DVDs that are out there right now or cable boxes? And we can do that. So New York is an example. New York wouldn't have the really ability to go to an automated rail system the way we could because their infrastructure doesn't support it, fleet alignment and of other factors. Whereas almost exclusively around the world, everyone is moving to an automated rail system, new build or conversion. We can replace our signaling system with a digital track circuit system. But a good example we gave at the last board meeting is we have about 32, I believe it is, train control rooms on the red line. We would still have 32 train control rooms on the red line. They'd just be newer digital track infrastructure. So we would not change our concept of operations at all. We just have newer cable boxes. Or are we moving to streaming services? And with the streaming services, we have opportunities to get return on investment. While we move to that, we can have the highest level of safety, the highest level of reliability, and become more cost efficient. As we present that out in the end of January, that is the kind of discussion. So we at some point we have to do more on signaling. That's just not a debatable piece for the organization, whether the board or this current staff. That will be the question. Really is: are we going to do this? Are we taking the operation of today and making it the same as 1970s with newer things, or are we moving to what the world will look like in 2030, 2040, 2050? And that is really the decision process that we'll have to do. So we owe a lot more to the board and then publicly. Our goal was to have a full rail automated program plan put together by the summer. That is still our goal, but we are slowly but surely building information to bring towards the board for January. It is really not that significant in this year's budget because we're talking billions of dollars to do this, and it should be looked at as a 20, 30-year program plan. But we understand that there's a lot of information people want, and we're trying to get as much of that as fast as possible, knowing that there's a lot we just simply don't know, and we're going to have to do a lot of diligence in the next year to 2 years to put that program together. So hopefully that helps, Mr. Spedler.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a really sort of healthy discussion because I do think that there is going to be some scrutiny of the capital budget this year, just given everything, where we are with DMV moves and just overall and people really coming together and want to do what's right, for the organization. So I mean, I do think there is going to be scrutiny, and I think it's our job to really, ask these questions. And I think our jurisdictions are going to expect us to do that. I tend to agree with Ms. Klein. I'm thinking about this and looking at all this information and some of our prior discussions. A bit of a hesitancy of moving forward with the hearing before we have a work session and, as Mr. McAndrew said, tease out and get a little more granular on some of this stuff. And I'm not necessarily sure that doing that is going to necessarily prevent a timeline that is going to be good for the organization. So that's sort of where I am on things. I don't think postponing the public hearing a little bit is going to necessarily hurt, that timeline.
I think that would be a Ms. Ellison question.
Yeah.
We had committed to a budget process. I think that was going to wrap up at the end of March,
Quickly as possible.
which I think is something we were trying to do for the benefit of our jurisdictional partners, among others. So I would like to stay to that general schedule, but whether there's some ability to move within, that time frame on the exact date of the public hearings and when we would need to decide that by, I guess, is a question.
Sure, we can look into that. I mean, there are a lot of options, including maybe moving up the capital budget work session also.
Right, I was about to
Yeah.
say.
Instead versus, or delaying. So we can certainly look at all the options and come back to the board with what those are.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, I think that even the comments coming back from our jurisdictional partners, I think are potentially going to be maybe a little more detailed than they've been in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll work on that. I think.
And them having some of that information might be helpful too for their
Sure.
support. Yeah.
Okay. Chair Santos. Chair Santos, I think you had a few more.
Yes, I did. Following up on Director Smedberg, and I'm sorry I stepped up just for a second, but the issue with that I heard Director Klein asking about the demonstration project, about the doors, and the discussion about previously, maybe not in this session, but also the question. And again, I look forward to being informed and educated and hear about benchmarking to other systems, how they're approaching these questions. Is one of the concerns is that are we as a board fully clear what what decisions we're making now have follow-on knock-on effects, right? In terms of budget commitments 2 years from now, 3 years from now. An example not related to platform doors and automated operations relate to electric buses, which we've discussed previously, right? So prior board made certain commitments, great ideas, and there's certain budget implications in terms of required investments to upgrade maintenance facilities and fleet, and some of it's out of Metro's control. Again, as we've said previously, this is not a criticism of, just to be clear, of existing management. There's supply chain issues. But again, I at least, speaking for myself, I am not yet comfortable, and my impression is I'm not the only one with just fully grasping how some of our decisions around some of these capital investments, what are potential implications, and just doesn't mean they're bad necessarily or that we wouldn't advance on them, but just getting more comfortable about the numbers and also the timing of all of it. So I think that on a positive note, the achievement of cost savings, both one time and ongoing, is all trending in the right direction. So that's all great. So what I hope you're hearing from us is definitely kudos to the staff for all the hard work and for trying to address some of these questions. I hope you're understanding that where it's coming from is just needing to get more comfortable, because understandably, while ridership is going up, again, part of the reason we're asking is that we all know that ridership patterns are changing. And do the recommended investments, whether it's modernization or state of good repair, do they match? We're trying to make sure it all matches to where we're going to the best of our ability, making the best decisions we can, given the information we have. Thanks.
Yeah, I just add, I want to be really clear to the board. We really appreciate the engagement. This is the big stuff is the strategy stuff. And that's what we owe it as the board and the senior team, to leave the place better than we got it, and for generation after generation. So just two quick comments on that. I don't say almost, I don't know what proper term, because people take terms different way, but an overwhelming majority of the Safe Repair program is irrelevant on ridership at all. It's just keeping water out of tunnel, replacing track, making sure escalators work. It is literally you own a house and you're just trying to keep the place from having leaks and all the other basic stuff. Overwhelmingly, our physical plant is gigantic, and that's what most of the money goes to. There are a few programs, and I think we look forward to in January, we'll do this really good deep dive, and I think there's 3 or 4 areas that we'll probably, I think, have a very robust conversation about, and I think that's a really healthy conversation. The zero emission is a great example where the industry is upside down, and not just on the bus side. It's data centers, it's utilities. Quite frankly, our pricing on all of our power substations is basically in 5 years, stuff has almost doubled. I mean, the entire country had to electrify at the exact same time, right? And so this is a major problem. But a good example on that is all of our money related to zero emission is committed. So there's really not a lot of strategy discussion as much as kind of putting a marker down on the policy that we're not going to meet our 2027 goals of buying zero emission, and we're not going to meet our 2042 of full conversion. And what I mean by that is we have an open contract with, in this case, New Flyer won a contract to supply buses for us. It's a 5-year contract, approximately about 400 vehicles to replace our 400 that are actually aging quickly. We have money in Northern, which is fully in construction, and unless the decision is to stop that, fully in construction of Bladensburg, and Cinderbag Garage, which is a partner with Fairfax, and we got a very significant federal grant for. Outside of those 4 items, there is nothing really else about zero emission, maybe a little rounding error, but that's all there is. We have no money to advance Western, and we have that property. There's no money to advance any other bus facility, and there's no money to buy any more buses outside of that contract, generally speaking. So I think getting into those details, but I do think that is important. The board, we have to make a policy decision. The board on, we're not going to make our goals, so what are our goals going to be? And that highlights to Board Member McAndrew's point, what is that money after the next 6 years to deliver what goal are we after? So I think, I speak, I think, about the whole staff. We like that interaction and discussion because that helps drive the strategy, so then we can go execute to that strategy and then get reported out on where we're meeting it.
Okay, and just on that bus issue, I mean, just more for the public benefit, because I think the board all knows this. Part of the issue is there aren't more buses to buy because of the existing supply chain and the incredible demand that's out there, as well as various restraints on what we can buy.
Yeah, it's not just on the fleet side. So the fleet is a challenge. We can really only buy from one vendor. So
Right.
anytime you, and they're a good vendor, but I'm not suggesting they aren't a good quality vendor. And they've built most of our regular fleet, although we do have competition on the diesel market. But we lost a supplier in the United States that's leaving. The other one, one other one went out of business, and the other one doesn't really sell to large agencies like ours. So that is a really big problem on the fleet side. But it's the facility side that is equal, if not worse, on both cost and time. The conversion of neighborhoods, electric cars, data centers, as you know well, out in Loudon, our facilities, the cost has just really changed significantly from even what people thought 4 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
Right. So as part of this discussion, I think we need to make sure we're not going to end up degrading bus service and not doing fleet replacement and things like that we need to do because we have a strategy that we can't execute.
Definitely.
So there's going to have to probably be some discussion about adjustment.
Definitely.
Mr. Spepper.
Yeah, just a quick point for what it's worth. I was on a APTA transit board member call the other day for the executive committee. And every single person on that call, their agency was pulling back an electric bus, other than the West Coast folks who are moving ahead with hydrogen, but and skipping electric altogether. So a lot of, I mean, they've all been basically put on hold.
Yeah, and there's a state mandate in California, but it's funded differently from the state. And like, again, every state, every transit agency, it's a little different, but I think it is a universal, as the chair mentioned. And we also have a very unique regulatory environment here in the United States. So a bus that we would spend $1.5 million on, someone in parts of Europe will get for $350,000 to $400,000. That's just the way. And again, not putting judgment on those regulatory or policy decisions, but they do have cost implication on that. So.
Right. Okay. Well, I know we spent a lot of time on this. Just one final thing. So this is another year where the 3% cap by statute is not going to be in place for us. However, I believe we are staying under 3% under our own auspices, our own management, right?
Thank you for that question, sir. So the 3% growth gets us about $52 million. And then there is the $95 million, which was previously discussed.
Yeah.
And that gets us a little bit upwards of 8% in total.
But in fair, and I get your point, but in fairness, that's a planned expense, like in the jurisdictional budgets, they know that's they're in Virginia, where our localities have to pay that share. We know it's there. So what the concern has been, and what the questions that I've been getting have been about, okay, besides that, are you going above 3%? Because legally and technically we can without that constraint in place. But my understanding with this proposal is that we're not. Which I think is important that we don't.
Not, and we are going to be able to drive, because of our automation work and efficiency on rail, which is not only safer, but that efficiency is going to drive us 2% more service and still staying underneath that cap.
Right. Okay. All right. So we had a lot of questions. I think there's clearly a desire to dive further into some of these topics and really understand, particularly on the capital side. So we're going to figure out the timing on the public hearing dates. and the inputs and figure out the timing on the board work session. There needs to be more than one board work session. There'll be more than one work session. It's our time. So if we want to spend more on it, we will. I know we have to be sensitive to staff as well that have a lot to do, but I'm sure they're here to support us in these conversations. So we will figure that out. And the vote today is simply to move forward the entire package into the public comment process. You know, it's not a commitment to everything that's in this package, but it is moving forward in order to keep us on the timeline that we've discussed, which is board adoption of a budget by the end of March, which is ideally where we should be given the jurisdictional timing on their budgets. So if there are no more questions, I'd like to move approval of the GM's proposed FY26 budget and FY26 to 31 CIP and public hearing authorization. Is there a second by a committee member?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Klein. Any further discussion on the motion specifically?
I just want to make a comment.
Yes.
I've had conversations with some of you around some of just the concerns about budget. You can hear it obviously in the questions today. I appreciate, Mr. Letourneau, your acknowledgement that we need to have additional deep dive working sessions. And I do think it would be appropriate to hold the public, opening it for public comment until we as a board are some of the questions that are going to require further information are fully satisfied, or satisfied to a level that we can feel more comfortable going to the public. What I don't want to have happen is that we go to public and then there's still so much the board isn't comfortable with, or we need to request surgery on the budget. I just think that would be confusing. So I support releasing this for public comment, but I just want to reiterate that I definitely want to have these work sessions beforehand.
Well, just to be precise on your language there, opening for public comment, I think technically would include the survey January 11th. So are you saying you want to have the workshop prior to that or prior to the public hearings, which I think is what Ms. Klein was suggesting, because that is kind of, I think that's probably a little bit more feasible from a timeline perspective, because if we held all public comment, I mean, you tell me, Ms. Meyer, I think we would be really delaying the process pretty significantly. But I think what we could do, again, I want to commit, Ellis and I are trying to communicate about this in real time. We could try to either reschedule the board work session earlier or move, Mr. Clark.
Yeah, we can't support that on the staff level. There's just too much work to do. We have the holidays coming up. I have certain staff members that are taking days off that haven't taken a day off in 8 months. We are all grounded around the 30th. We'll do our best if the decision is made. We can do an analysis to see if we can meet our current scheduled committee meeting. But anything earlier than that is just
in terms of the work session. You mean?
Yeah, I just can't.
Okay. Well, yeah. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it, though, was having the public hearing a week later or something like that after that. So if you're okay with that, just to be precise on because I don't think we want to tell them to hold all public comment activities until we've had the work session. Right.
Sure.
Okay. Ms. Klein.
Sorry, just to follow up on this. I'm sensing there's a lot more discussion happening this year about some of these projects and programs that I'm hearing just not necessarily a level of comfort from the board. And I do think we can go ahead and keep the process moving, but I think I guess I would say my support for the process is a little bit contingent on making sure that these things get resolved in a way that is going to enable the public and our jurisdictional partners to fully understand as what's in the budget proposal and the CIP, Capital Investment Program, trying to de-acronym ourselves. I lost my train of thought while I was de-acronyming. I think that it is really important to understand that this is a process vote and not a substance vote, because we are, there's a lot of different ways things can go as more information comes out, et cetera. So I just wanted to reiterate that. I think we're all on the same page, but if anybody is not on that page, let's speak up.
Okay. All right. Any further comment on the motion then?
The only other, I guess, request of staff would be as early as possible kind of very specific stuff that you're not comfortable with, so we are best prepared for the committee workshop versus the stuff that we've already done. So the earlier that would be appreciated, just so again,
Yeah, I think what I'm
try to be as
actually,
responsive as possible. I think we're still a little gray on the lack of comfortability and what that is exactly. So the more we can get that, I think that we're just, again, so we can support the board.
I think my intent here, which I don't normally necessarily do, would be to lay out a process with timelines that we need to get questions in by, working with you and the staff to understand what your turnaround is going to be. Because I think sometimes questions come in, they can only be turned around as fast as they can be. Sometimes there's frustration on the board level about how long it takes and so on. So if we're going to have a productive work session and we want to have everybody's questions, then let's put that process out ahead of time so everybody knows what they need to be working toward for their questions. If that makes sense.
And to underscore some of that, so I know at a work session that we had, was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago? The day is blurring. One of the pending questions was around platform screen doors and getting clarity on the timing, the costs, the implications, and other information about it, just to pick something. There was a few other questions, but just to pick that for a moment. And there was a request for summary information. And I know I, at least, maybe others got it differently. I at least got that information yesterday, probably close of business. And by the time I noticed it, right, so I, like many of you, have other obligations. I was probably casually looking at my email and chopping cheese as I was making dinner for my kids, right? And just to get granular for a moment, as board members, we appreciate very much the work the staff does. We hear all the time about how there's people are burning the candle, busy answering. But just to reiterate, Chairman Letourneau, I look forward to working with you on the timing of that and just being clear about expectations, because I did read the memo before today. And I also noted that, at least for me, and again, speaking on my behalf, just for myself, there wasn't the level of detail that I was expecting in that document. But I couldn't turn around and ask, right? Because it wouldn't have been, this morning at 7 a.m. to say, but, A, B, C, D, I would need to see in it to be able to understand. So, look forward to getting clearer to reiterating what our expectations are. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Smedberg.
Yeah,
on the motion.
Yeah, and I know there's usually a communique that goes out after this vote. Is there anything that we have to be clear about in that, in terms of public outreach or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think we need to work with Ms. Elsa on the timing of the specific public hearing dates. So that may need to change from what was going to be communicated.
Yeah.
But otherwise.
As well as maybe the closing of the survey. I think we had that on the table as well.
Yeah, you said that was February
3rd.
Yeah, there's usually a section about public outreach and input or something.
Yeah, as long as whatever we're saying doesn't specify the dates, I think we're okay. We'll figure out.
Okay, I don't want to do that real time.
Yeah,
so let's take some time and get that right. All right. Okay, I'll ask Ms. Ellison to call the roll or administer the vote. I'm sorry.
Chair Letourneau.
Aye.
Vice Chair Klein.
Aye.
Ms. Santos.
Aye.
Mr. McAndrew.
Looking for the discussion. Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
All right, with no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned. We need 5 minutes to reset. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break to reset before the board.
Good afternoon. I am Valerie Santos, the Chair of the WMATA Board. Thank you for being here today, and just apologies that we're running slightly behind, so thank you for your patience. We'll begin with the approval of the agenda. I would like to consider the agenda approved as presented. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Thank you. We have 3 sets of minutes for approval from the November 21st board meeting, from the executive sessions on the 21st of November and on December 4th. I would also like to consider these minutes approved as presented. Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Okay, so I'd like to turn now to our board spotlight. So today's board spotlight recognizes Metro's IT Customer Support Center for its swift response to the Microsoft CrowdStrike global outage that happened this past summer. I would like to ask the following WMATA employees to stand. Bobby Burton and Daryl Mason from Service Management. Gabe Childers and Benjamin Tran from Cybersecurity. Kirk Rawlings and Joseph Miller from IT Operations. Lynn Fleming and Suresh Katragada, I hope I pronounced that correctly, IT Infrastructure. I think. On Friday, July 19, at approximately 4 in the morning, CrowdStrike caused a global IT outage, which disrupted services for many businesses, including Metro, who rely on that firm for real-time threat detection and security management of their Windows-based computer systems. CrowdStrike is a leading cybersecurity company known for its flagship product, Falcon Endpoint Detection and Response. Falcon provides advanced security monitoring to detect and respond to potential security breaches on devices across a network. The Falcon platform is widely deployed across assets. The root cause of the outage was identified as a critical software update to Falcon that inadvertently introduced a system-wide bug, resulting in a system crash and inability to restart. The outage had widespread global implications, including major disruption to key services such as air travel, healthcare, banking, and some emergency services. This was all over the news, I remember. However, the outage did not affect Metro's ability to provide bus and rail service. We only experienced a few early disruptions to Metro access. Due to the nature of the outage, the only available resolution was to manually log into impacted systems one by one to restart. As the extent of the outage unfolded and Metro systems began to fail, the staff initiated emergency response procedures and quickly identified and restored critical systems. Our team quickly mobilized, worked as a coordinated team, and got our core systems up and running shortly after morning rush hour. In the early hours of the morning, our help desk technicians were stationed in the lobby of the Metro offices here at L'Enfant and Eisenhower, as well, to address customers' blue screen of death issues that had happened that day and throughout the weekend to ensure that affected devices were manually patched. Due to the above and beyond incredible efforts of these teams within digital modernization, critical systems were swiftly restored, revenue service was not impacted, as well as employee laptop issues were quickly resolved through proactive customer support. We'd like to thank you, to the employees we're recognizing today, for remaining focused on the safety of our passengers and employees while providing continuous IT customer support. Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to the public comment and advisory body reports. My understanding is that we did not receive any advance public comments, so we will shift to advisory body reports. And first up is, we'll hear from the Accessibility Advisory Committee Chair, Patrick Sheehan.
Yeah, is there a mic? And it's right in front of you. Okay, great. Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. Good to be here. I'm glad I'm on this side of the table as opposed to the other. You guys did a lot of good work today. We have a couple of things that I'd like to talk about. First, the good news. We met last month with Sarah Meyer's signage team, and they demonstrated to us a Braille machine, basically a display that took and helped create signage with Braille and large print that took 1/3 the time that the manual machines took. Did an excellent job using overlay technology and 3D printing, digital printing, to make signage that is better than what we had before. It's cheaper to make. The color contrast was excellent. It exceeds ADA standards and can be done in 1/3 the time. So really, really impressive. That group, we met a bunch of her team. They're very dedicated. There are 12 people on her team. They'll be able to produce the signage, which is going to be nicely configured, easy to read, and just outstanding. So congratulations to Sarah and her team. We had some low vision individuals take a look at the signage. They were very impressed with the tactile printing, the quality of the Braille, and I think with this type of equipment that they have upgraded to, they'll be able to get to even more signage that they have in their backlog. So we were very pleased to see that. Paul, thank you very much for coming to AAC meeting last month to talk to us about DMV moves. I think the committee now has a better understanding of what the project's about, the scope of the project, the function, what the region, and what some of the challenges are going to be. I think what has, over the last month or two, has made them much more satisfied with where WMATA is going is that we see that we're not in the same kind of crunch that we were a year ago with the doomsday budget, things being cut. So they're feeling much better about the finances, where we're going, and what the state of good repair is going to look like. DMV moves is a strategy to take us from a jurisdictional to a regional set of priorities, and the committee is, very eager to take a look at what happens. Is very pleased to be at the table going forward and contributing accessibility to the mix. So thank you for that. We do understand that we have some challenges on the Metro Access sign. At the beginning of December, we put together we hired another contractor that is in Montgomery County. We understand our on-time performance has slipped to about 89, 88%. We want to try to bring that up to over 90 that we've been used to over the last few years. We understand our contract, I think, has a 92% on-time performance that we need to meet. And we'll take a look at those results. Mr. Blake is doing an outstanding job in monitoring the contract and making sure that it's going to meet those targets. There's also an opportunity in, I think it's March, to bring on another contract in DC if we find that we still haven't met those 90 to 92% targets. So the committee does have a lot of confidence with respect to what's going on there. We also have been focused, as I mentioned last month, on upgrading, or at least trying to understand where we are in Prince George's County. The Bus Rail Committee has put together a task force, which includes members of the Bus Rail Subcommittee, myself, Sandy Newzell, outstanding low vision person on the committee, is heading that. We also have 2 or 3 people from Prince George's County who live there that are subject matter experts on that task force. We've invited Victor and Don Drummer. Thank you very much for the work you did to help us organize that and for being involved. We appreciate all the efforts that you put together. We have invited Victor Weisberg from Prince George's County to take a look at where we are with respect to improvements in the county. We have a report from 2018 that covers 2018 to 2024. They're going to come up with a new upgraded Prince George's County plan in 2025. We'd like to be able to take a look at what the improvements have been from 2018. I'm particularly interested in what the infrastructure is going to look like. Have we built additional sidewalks? What does the lighting look like? How many additional bus shelters have we put up? What type of shelters do they look like? And then we'll take some of the recommendations that they put forward in 2018 to 2024, compare those recommendations with the recommendations they're going to put out in 2025, and see how we can work with this particular group. I know that Prince George's County has been working with Better Bus Network. They've been doing a nice job of coordinating and trying to extend the service, but we think they can probably do better. We think I'd like to understand what the funding looks like coming from Maryland and how much of that funding is actually being put into public transportation. So we have lots of areas that we can discuss. We're reading reports and coming up to speed. We look forward to working directly with Victor and see where we can make improvements, coordinate those improvements, particularly through DMV moves, and do what we can to improve transportation in Prince George's County. Don, anything that you have for us as far as direction in Prince George's County? Would love to be able to coordinate all of that through you so that the board has some idea of what's going on there. Lastly, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody. This is an excellent board. I feel very privileged to work with you. The amount of work that you guys do is just amazing. And if the AAC can contribute in any small way to improve transportation, we are pleased to do that. So thank you. Questions for me?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sheehan, and we appreciate you and all the work that you do. And we appreciate the collaboration and all the contributions.
Great, thank you. Okay.
My understanding is Mr. Cole Stout is virtual or sent in a message, is that right? For the RAC report. Pardon the technical difficulties. We'll give it another 30 seconds and then we can go on and come back to this. Okay, I'm going to assume that maybe you need a little time. So I will go to the administrative business and we can come back to this. You'll tell me, John. Okay, so the board appointed new members to the Riders Advisory Council, or RAC, at last month's meeting. Today, we're being asked to reappoint 3 members whose terms expire at the end of the month. And just as a reminder, the Riders Advisory Council actively seeks input from a broad range of riders and organizations on operational and budgetary issues that affect Metro Rail, Metro Bus, and Metro Access. And they provide input and advise our board of directors on ways to resolve issues to improve Metro services. I'd like to move the following for approval, which is the reappointment of Lucas Saboski as an at-large member for a full term through December 2026, the reappointment of Brian Meyer, representing the Commonwealth of Virginia, for a full term through December of 2026, and lastly, the reappointment of Ali Siddiqui, representing the state of Maryland, for a full term through December 2026. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Director Letourneau. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. Should we try again with the sound or no? No, yes? Otherwise, I'll keep going if you need more time. All right. Okay, we'll get back to that. You got it? All right, we'll come back to this. Working out the system. Okay, so we will highlight that Metro successfully hosted the International Association of Public Transport, acronym UITP, here in Washington, D.C. last week. For those who may not be familiar, UITP is the Global Association of Metros. It includes public transport authorities, operators, policymakers, and services and supply sector. People came here from diverse cities all around the world, from Delhi to Helsinki, excuse me, Paris to Toronto. And these systems brought a wealth of knowledge, practical experiences, and innovative ideas. The conference offered a unique opportunity to exchange insights and lessons learned, both for Metro as well as for those systems to learn from good practices here, to forge new partnerships and collaborate about solutions that will shape the future of urban public transit. Exposure to how other global cities are building and operating urban transport systems and addressing their respective challenges is part of how we at Metro are modeling transformation and global best practices. As we know that to be truly world-class, as Metro is, but to maintain our status and continue improving, Metro needs to exchange knowledge and collaborate with leaders. There were discussions about everything ranging from artificial intelligence and applicability to yield efficiencies and service improvements in transit systems, strategies to increase sustainability, and other business models to address financing other challenges that the industry faces. I did, and I think a couple other board members managed to attend several sessions of the conference, and Metro did great. Obviously, it was great to have our general manager so engaged and other members of the leadership team. So I was definitely inspired and proud to be part of Metro, and to be able to witness how Metro definitely belongs on the world stage as one of the best systems. I would like to thank the team for working and coordinating behind the scenes to ensure that the conference was successful. I'm going to give you one before I go to my next topic. Are you guys ready? Keep going. All right. Okay. Next, I want to recognize that December is Persons with Disabilities Awareness Month and includes the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, celebrated December 3rd. The United Nations General Assembly proclaimed this particular day in 1992 to raise awareness of disability issues and promote rights and well-being of people with disabilities. The theme for this year, 2024, is amplifying the leadership of persons with disabilities for an inclusive and sustainable future. The leadership of persons with disabilities is epitomized by the global disability rights movement's slogan, "Nothing about us without us." It connotes the basic requirements of participation and representation and inclusion, and calls for persons with disabilities to actively shape the conditions of their lives. There's an estimated more than 1 billion people experience significant disability around the world, which is roughly 1 in 6 of us. And people with disabilities represent a significantly diverse group with a wide range of needs, and some of those may not be so easy to see. This day promotes the benefits of an accessible and inclusive society for all. I want to invite my fellow board member, Ms. Martin Proctor, who's one of our biggest champions on about this topic, persons with disabilities. Would you like to say a few words? Love the holiday look.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Board. Just to say a few things. First and foremost, happy holidays, and thank you everyone for joining us in person and virtually. I know that the holiday season can be a lot and very stressful, and we appreciate everybody coming to discuss the way transportation is working in WMATA and DC and the DMV area. Very few months represent as many traditions. We've got Hanukkah, we've got Christmas, we've got Kwanzaa, and all of these cultural representations do one thing. They look for light and for hope and understanding. And as we celebrate Persons with Disability Awareness Month, PWD, which is one of the personal pronouns that I use in my signature line. So if you see that, that's what it stands for. We're here to also say that disability is about inclusion, it's about dignity, it's about identity, and it's about a point of power. Having living with multiple sclerosis since I was 16 years old and low vision, these are items and things that I take to heart, and that I know that here at WMATA, we stand on this principle of accessibility and inclusion. With our slogan, where Metro is for everyone, that is what WMATA is here to do and is for. So as we honor this month of persons with disabilities, as we look towards the future, as we see the things that are happening around, right now at the White House, we are having a convening on caring, which is talking about people with disabilities and people aging in the community. It's featuring Misty Copeland. It's featuring our Secretary of Health and Human Services. It's featuring our Secretary of Policy, Gender and Policy. So this conversation continues to take place and happen. So I want us all to be aware of accessibility and inclusion through transportation, and that WMATA, Metro, this board, and this community is here to make sure that we will remain and continue to strive to be the gold standard of accessibility and inclusion with regards to transportation and participation in the community. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Director. One more announcement, which, and I'm just want to announce that New Year's Eve will be fare free on bus and rail beginning at 8 p.m. through 1 a.m. So be fare free beginning at 8 p.m. through 1 a.m. on New Year's Day. I can't believe it's almost 2025. I still have to remember to write 24 at the end. Metro's partnership with Molson Coors this year makes this possible, and I know that more details will get shared in coming days about how that's going to work. And lastly, we would like to wish everyone a happy holiday season. We will be back for public board activities in January. We're working out the dates, but I think the 16th and 30th, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, we will be back in January for additional public sessions, and that concludes my report. And I will now turn the floor over to our general manager for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Make mine relatively quickly here. We're going to start off with ridership, always something we want to talk about. APTA, our national association, put this out the other day, just kind of representing across the country. We know our story, but in relation to around the country, WMATA has led all the larger agencies on ridership growth this year. 44 straight months of ridership growth here at Metro. A good example that we believe this will continue is in December. Our high last year was 425,000, I think approximately. Tuesday, we had 485,000. So very significant jump December year over year. And there's lots of talk about potentially more need for transit for a variety of people coming in January. And we look forward to being there for the people that use it occasionally or all the time. And we have some capacity that we still have for people. And as that gets crowded, we're looking as well to see how many more 8-car trains we can get out into the system. If we go to the next slide, please, to the board members' comment about it is the holiday season. There we go. Thank you. Number one, train and bus wraps are out on the system. It's called the sweetest ride of the year. So very Instagram worthy if you're out there. Getting lots of attention, makes people feel really good. I want to highlight in the upper right corner and the middle, I joined their Trans Police leadership team at Ronald McDonald House earlier this week. I just want to commend our Community Services Bureau and our Trans Police leadership team. We are doing partnerships all over the place, and this one at Ronald McDonald House is pretty special during the holidays. An incredible cause that, you know, I think we'd encourage people to support. They do incredible work for people in very challenging times of their families' lives, and they do it all at no cost to people that really need that help. So we went out and tried to provide a holiday moment to really, you know, give a little reprieve from what sometimes families are going through. So just really, again, recognizing the Trans Police Department on that great work. And then on the bottom left corner is our, I should mention that bus that you'll see wrapped is going to be Columbia Heights on the 18th for our annual holiday we do one for Spooky Bus and we do a holiday bus so we can get people out and interact. On the bottom left corner, as I mentioned, our Metro Holiday Pop-Up Store is in full effect again this year. I want to give Georgetta, under Sarah, but Georgetta, under her, a lot of recognition for the great work that she's doing leading our marketing efforts. The store, I think, has already sold over 100,000 more than last year. Incredible. It will not close our budget issues, but I do think it's...
Sell more sweaters.
Yeah, it says a lot about a couple of years ago. A lot of people want to cover up their M on their uniform, and now we're selling holiday swag. So I think it just represents the incredible work the team is doing. And I want to really thank our partners at the MLK Library, Rich and his team, just really good, and it's helping bring through traffic into a great institution in DC as well. Tonight there's a group holiday photo the team put together at 6:30 outside the library. If you have purchased a holiday Metro sweater, join us for a festive picture. Next up, Regional Opportunity Partnership, one of our big themes of our strategic plan. The chair did a good update on UITP, so I won't add more there, but I want to thank the chair for being involved and just congratulate our team. We had an incredible turnout around the world and it was a great event. The bottom is yesterday we were here with the Council of Governments. They have a fire life safety committee, and we work very closely with our regional fire chiefs, both on drill, exercise planning, lessons learned if there's any incidents, how we can use technology, system design, you name it. Really great group of fire chiefs here in this region. We work very closely, both operations, Trans Police side, and our safety department. And I think this is just another good highlight of we never, ever stop thinking about safety, and the collaboration is fantastic. Just a reminder, everyone, we have a full-time captain. This time it's for DC Fire in our control center on our command line that works with rail, bus, and police, what we call Police 1, Rail 1, Comms 1, Bus 1, and ultimately Metro 1 on all incident management. So something that never happened, back in the L'Enfant tragedy days. And I just want to thank our partners in the fire life safety community for all they do with us every day. Next is progress, just again, the big initiatives for the year and where we're moving. Automatic train operation got announced publicly. The WMSC gave their concurrence just the other day, and I'm happy to announce we're going to be able to go live on ATO on the Red Line on December 15th. Working on system-wide implementation through 2025, hopefully on the earlier end of 2025. It's 15 years since the system hasn't been used. We started this process with international peer reviews. An incredible amount of safety engineering work has gone into this. It is undoubtedly Metro would be safer, more reliable, and more cost efficient with this service. I want to thank the WMSC for their collaboration on this program, and a really big call out to our executive leaders on this, Brian, Andy, Teresa, and their teams, specifically, Shashil, and Tiffany, and Shanita, and Roy, and just a volume of people, and Jamie Johnson is just one of the, we had a senior management team yesterday meeting, yesterday we had a senior management team meeting with all of our management team. And I said, as important as IMAC train operation is to our organization from a safety and rail operations point of view, it also has a major cultural impact. It hopefully further reinforces a culture of yes, we can versus no, we can't. And that is the thing I think this management team is incredibly focused on, is the harder the problem, the more we're digging in, and it's getting done because there is cross-department collaboration, probably like this place maybe has never seen. And I just cannot thank enough our management team and the team that makes it happen, because they are as Andy also says, they're going after it every day to make this place better for the people that need it. So just kudos to everyone for their hard work on that. And thanks for the board for all your support and encouragement on the note I sent you the other night. It's this couldn't have got done unless we all, as an organization, understood the value of this and pushed forward. On the right, Metro bus enforcement, as I announced, as the chair said, the days and weeks are blurring a little bit. I apologize. Must be the end of the year. I hope it's the end of the year. We announced that we were going to significantly ramp up fare evasion enforcement on the bus side. So far, this is the end of night last night, so we're well over 2,000 buses already. Again, we were doing some of this already, but this is additional, really extra staff and resourcing on it. Someone deterred means someone walked up and walked away. They either went and got fare and then came back, or they just walked away and they're not using the service. Over 1,300 people. We've had almost 500 citations. We've had 30 arrests. Now, those arrests are not just for fare evasion. That is failure to comply or some other issue. We put out some social on this yesterday, took a very significant dangerous weapon off the system with someone on a bus. So again, we made it very clear, not everyone that's committing other crimes are fare evading, but almost universally, if you're fare evading or committing bad crimes, you're fare evading. So we are really trying to make sure people pay their fair fare and also improve the safety on the system. So call out here to Brian and the chief, lots of other people, but they really put this plan and they're really implementing it very well. Last slide, a couple other updates. Just a reminder, that is definitely not my update, but I did mention the pop-up store. There we go. Nope. If it's not there, so be it. I'm not sure why. We got a lot of issues apparently. So December 15th, which is Sunday, our next service improvements go into effect. There's been a lot of advance notice. Just a reminder, yellow, green, we're going to 6 minutes all day up to 9:30. Now we can implement our full budget, now that we have all of our trains and staff to do that. We also have 26 Metro bus changes, including some that are helping our, in DC specific, related to the circulator routes, either ending or truncating. And that goes into effect on Sunday. And lastly, the winter planned work, again, from December 20th to the 30th, we have two different sections, basically from Foggy, Foggy through LaFont, do different pieces to really go after our track infrastructure work. It's the heaviest used parts of the system. It gets a lot of train movement all day, every day. We need to get that done. It's the lowest ridership part of the year, so it's the most cost-effective way to go in there as well. And this ensures we'll have safe, reliable service like we've been delivering, especially for our big special events coming up. World Pride inauguration in 2025. So with that, happy to answer any questions or comments from the board. And again, just happy holidays to the board and to the whole staff. Thank you for your incredible efforts this year, and happy holidays.
Please. I don't think it should not be overlooked that even in this time of budget, and as we try and make sure that we're right-sizing and pulling everything that we can to make our transportation efforts the best, the fact that we are doing fare-free on New Year's Eve is critical. We're putting health and safety above. So I think that that needs to be acknowledged, that though we're working really hard to make sure that this budget is right, we're also making sure that our community is safe, first and foremost. Thank you.
Thanks, Director. Any other questions for Mr. Clark? I'll just one comment, which is just want to second or underscore the comment about commending staff, particularly and leadership, but leadership and senior staff for just focus on excellence and focus on results. As you can hear by some of the questions coming around, that the organization is moving, and there's a focus on trying to achieve the goals and the vision and moving forward, and appreciate the willingness to engage in the difficult discussions with the board and driving forward. So whether it's around automatic train operations, and also a very difficult topic around fare evasion, these are examples of things that are uncomfortable and complicated, and appreciate the willingness to tackle the difficult issues. Okay, so now we'll move on to our committee report. First up is Finance and Capital, Mr. Letourneau.
Thank you. The following item was referred to the board at this morning's Finance and Capital Committee meeting. Item A, authorization for public hearings on the proposed 26 operating capital budgets and the 26 to 31 capital improvement program. Staff is seeking authorization to conduct public hearings and associated outreach on Metro's proposed 26 budget and 26 to 31 CIP. As we know, the 26 budget has several significant changes to rail service patterns and frequency to efficiently address growing ridership. We have a proposal for early weekend rail opening times, as well as later Friday, Saturday weekend rail closing times, and the previously approved bus network changes as part of the Better Bus Network redesigned. Metro will conduct hearings and outreach beginning in late January, and of course, we just discussed some specific timing about that, public hearings, as well as further board work and conversations on that. So, Madam Chair, I move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Letourneau. We have a motion on the floor. Can I please get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Smedberg. Any discussion? Okay, I will now ask our board corporate secretary to administer the vote.
Chair Santos,
Aye.
Vice Chair Smedberg,
Aye.
Vice Chair McAndrew,
Aye.
Ms. Klein,
Aye.
Ms. Worth,
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau,
Aye.
Mr. Drummer,
Aye.
Ms. Martin Proctor.
Abstain.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. We have 2 items on our consent agenda today. I would like to move approval of the following, which is approval of the collective bargaining agreement with ATU Local 922. Staff has requested approval of the contract settlement between WMATA and Local 922, which is the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, for FY25 through FY28. Local 922 is the union for employees at Metro's Landover Bus Division. And the other item for approval is the authorization to apply for NVTC Commuter Choice Grant. Staff has asked for board authorization to apply for the Commuter Choice Grant funding from the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, NVTC. This grant program invests funding from I-66 and I-95, 395 toll revenues into transit and multimodal projects. And Metro will be applying to fund 2 bus routes in the 95-395 corridor, a new service from the west end of Alexandria to downtown DC, as well as increased frequency on service from Alexandria's west end and South Arlington to the Pentagon. The grant request would fund 2 years' worth of service on these routes. I move approval. Can I please have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? These items are approved. Next, invite reports from the jurisdictions. Mr. Smedberg, I don't know if you have anything for NVTC, and then we'll go to Mr. McAndrew.
Yeah, I do just briefly. Tomorrow, the NVTC and the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission are going to hold their annual legislative forum. Randy is going to be on a transit leaders panel. And then the main panel and the main, the one panel that will garner a lot of attention and discussion is about the future of transit funding. And we have legislative leaders serving on that the panel, and Nick Donahue, who is working with the DMV Moves effort, staff-wise helping coordinate those efforts, will moderate that panel. I think more than 250 people have RSVP'd, so it should be a really, really good event. So look forward to it.
And I think Senator Lucas as well, right, Mr. Smith?
Yeah.
Senator Lucas will be on that panel, so
Louise
we're always
Lucas.
happy to have her up in the DMV.
Yeah, she's up in the DMV. Senator Lucas, for those of you who don't know, is the chair of the Senate Finance Committee in Virginia. So,
And just one other thing, real briefly, we just did the item, but it is significant that Metro is applying for an MBTC Commuter Choice Grant. So this is back when the tolling was added to 66. We've had this ongoing competitive grant process jurisdictions have been benefited from, where toll revenue is going back to transit. I do run into constituents a lot who are don't know and don't believe that the money is actually going toward a good cause, but it is. And I was really delighted that Metro is taking the initiative to seek to have some funding allocated to a couple of our routes for out of that process. We'll see how it goes and how it scores and so on, but just wanted to specifically note that. Thank you.
Thank you. Director McAndrew?
Thank you. A few items, Director Drummer and I will cover. We'll split up our jurisdiction. I'll cover Montgomery County. Real quickly, there's a lot of movement afoot in the county. Specifically, APTA recently gave a recognition as WMATA has good ridership numbers. The region has good ridership numbers, but the ride-on bus network in Montgomery County was recognized as the #2 nationally recently in ridership growth for medium-sized transit systems. They also gave an innovation award for the bus depot microgrid to the county that's going to help them advance hydrogen fuel cell electric bus efforts. And then on capital expansion efforts in the county, specifically to their BRT program, they recently entered project development phase for FTA new starts for the Maryland 355 program. Got an RFP out there on the street, and then they're also asking for a rating on Veers Mill BRT and for small starts, and we're excited to see what comes back from FTA and next year's budget on that front. That's what I've got.
Thank you. So Prince George's County is approaching closure of a period of seeking public feedback for roadway safety through a survey available on the county's Vision Zero website through the end of the calendar year. And we're encouraging residents to get involved and provide feedback in safe roadway users, for safe vehicles, for safe speeds, for safe roads, and for emergency response care. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Klein.
Nothing from my end. Anything, Director Martin Proctor?
I think that the only thing from the federal government perspective that we just want to highlight that the Christmas tree is lit. And it would be wonderful for everybody to take the metro and go down and see the amazing tree that was put together and put up. And it was done all by volunteers. The ornaments are all made by kids. And I think that it's a great opportunity to really show and highlight and have some good fun in DC.
Director Worth is going to tell me there's none. Okay, there's nothing new from the DC. All right, great. With no further business to come before the board, we stand adjourned. Thank you for joining us today, and we will now reconvene for our board executive session from this morning. Thank you.